Hey, my people. Welcome to a conversation with none other than Queen Cleopatra the Seventh. I know y'all have been asking for a conversation with Cleopatra for a while. And if you've missed some of the lives we've done over the last few months, we've actually been talking to Cleopatra's been here the whole time. We've had a few live conversations with Cleopatra. Cleopatra's shown up in some of the live streams we've done, live stream readings that we've been doing over the past few months. So if you've been keeping up with the live streams, you know Cleopatra's been around. She hasn't gone anywhere, but she has not had her own video in a while. So I was like, let's sit down and have a conversation. There's a lot going on spiritually in the world. What topic shall we talk about, Cleopatra? That you feel is relevant to what we're going through today. And Cleopatra said, dealing with your enemies. So who better to ask than, the queen of dealing with her enemies, right? And she had many of them. So thank you all for being here. I am Lamarr Townsend. I'm a psychic and an energy channeler, a tarot reader, and an astrologer. So I thank you all for being here. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're new. Welcome. I have done many conversations and interviews and psychic readings on Cleopatra. So if you're just new to this channel, if you're just finding this video, definitely check out the Conversations with Cleopatra playlist I have on my YouTube channel, and check out all the other conversations we've had with Cleopatra. Thank you all for being here. I am also available for personal readings, by the way, so if you would like your own personal reading, do not hesitate to reach out. You can text me, speaking of Cleopatra, here she is again. You can text me at 703-791-9162. You can also email me at lamarr.townsend@gmail.com. Of course, the best way to reach me is via my website, lamarrtownsendtarot.com. Phone readings do have same day priority as well, so just keep that in mind. And by the way, just to let you know, this is my website. So once you've reached this page, if you've never been to my website, now you know what it looks like. This is the correct page. So definitely, when you get a chance, you can check out my Twitch. Of course, subscribe, like to my YouTube. Check out my podcast on Spotify. But if you actually want more Cleopatra content, check out my Patreon. Lots of content over here on Patreon. I just recently did this is my Patreon page, by the way. I just recently did a series, a two-part series on the history of tarot cards on my Patreon. I did a class last month on love drawing food and herbs for manifesting love. And we have conversations here with Cleopatra all the time. In August, we had a conversation with Cleopatra about the economic recession. Pretty soon, we're going to have a new conversation coming up with Cleopatra coming up here this month or next month. July, we had a conversation about the virus in 2023. I really like my makeup that day. It's on point that day. So, we had a conversation with Cleopatra in June about money and finances, which was a really good one. I might have to just take a look at that one, actually. I did a class on how to properly prepare and take a spiritual bath. So, if you want more content, more exclusive content that I don't show necessarily on YouTube, then I definitely would subscribe to my YouTube channel once again. So, thank you all so much for your support. Um, and yeah, so if you would like a reading, scroll down. You can read the reviews from people who have purchased readings from me. You can also, of course, follow me down here on Instagram and Facebook. And if you would like a reading, go right to the store section of my website. This is where you can go to view all the rates, services, products, classes, and different types of things I offer. And I do quite a lot. I do birth chart readings. I do email readings. I do phone readings, of course. I do video recorded readings where you send your questions or your information, and then I record myself doing your reading on my own time, and then I send you the download link for you to keep the video, download the video, and keep. Um, I do candles as well, so if you guys want spiritual manifestations or candle magic or anything like that. And like I said, I also do past life readings. I do mediumship readings, much like the one we're about to do with Cleopatra. I have had clients contact me wanting to channel Cleopatra in their own personal reading. So, that's also an option. So I have a lot to offer on my website. So if you'd be interested in anything from me, a reading or anything like that, and I'm always expanding my website, adding new things, definitely once again reach out to me on my website, lamarrtownsendtarot.com. With that being said, let's get into the conversation with Cleopatra. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and open up the energies and bring forth Cleopatra's energy by doing a singing bowl. Thank you, Spirit, for opening up the channel so that we can connect with the energy of Cleopatra the Seventh. Thank you for making this space a sacred space so that Cleopatra can come through and share with us any wisdom, insight, or clarity that she would like to share about the topic at hand, about dealing with one's enemies. Thank you for protecting Cleopatra, my energy, my thoughts, my mind, and my emotions, and those watching. Amen, amen, and amen. All right. Welcome, Cleopatra. She looks gorgeous. It almost looks like she has like a red dot on her forehead in the style of like Indian culture or something like that. She also has on a red garb, a red and gold red. It looks like red chiffon or something like that with a gold trim, almost like scarf around her. She's wearing kind of just a simple dress from her time, although it's not so simple, but for her it is more simple. It looks like tan almost, with trimmings on it as well. She looks very gorgeous, but just kind of like, I just, almost like either she threw something on or she's just come from a festival or some sort of celebration. So I hope we're not interrupting anything, Queen Cleopatra. Or it could be some sort of ritual as well, so it's interesting. I almost want to ask, like, do they do rituals on the other side? But I'm assuming, she says yes, they do. So, all right. Well, anyways, Cleopatra, sorry to interrupt whatever you had going on, but we just wanted, first of all, the people miss you. We miss you. I miss you. Of course, we know, some of us know you're always around, but the people miss, having conversations with you. So we would like to have a conversation today about dealing with your enemies. And we just want to know, what do you have to say about such a topic, dealing with one's enemies? First thing she says is you've come to the right place. She says with me, I could build an army against my enemies. But with others, such as yourself, or, the person watching this video, you may not have such luxury, she says, obviously. She says one luxury you do have is the ability to build an army in the spiritual realm against your enemies. Humans, especially in today's day and age, because humans have become even more advanced, she says, even more cultured in a lot of ways, and even more educational or educated. Humans, she says, because of these things, because of these factors, because of, our access to phones and stuff like that, humans have actually, believe it or not, become less easy to control and manipulate. Alright? She says back in the day, in my time, in her time, she's saying it was easy to manipulate the masses. It was easy to build an army of people. It was easy to get people to submit to a loyalty to you. Especially if you knew the politics of the mind, of the human mind, to some degree. It was easy because, to people who were a bit lower class, people who were peasants, or, back in those days, didn't have access to knowledge or the wherewithal that there's a whole world out there and they can make their bones and, things of that nature. It's like, the world has changed so much. So, she says, Cleopatra says, in that same lane, it's become easier for one to gain enemies. And it's also become easier for one to, she says, annihilate one's enemy or enemies. She says secrecy. Secrecy. A lot of things are done in secrecy. A lot of one's enemy's works are done in secrecy. So she says you must learn from your enemy. She says the art of winning a battle against an enemy can really come down to a couple things, she says. Strategy is the first thing I hear her say. Strategy, loyalty, she says. Interesting. Studying your enemy, and she kind of says secrecy slash moving in silence. She goes just like this. You mustn't ever let your enemy know that you're, well, number one, she says, you mustn't let them know, number one, that you're on to them. Because you give yourself away. You give yourself away when you do that. Then they're looking for you at any given, moment, at any given juncture, at any given corner. They're looking for you to attack once they know, if they know that you're on to them. But number two, you don't want your enemy to know that you're bothered by them. You don't want your enemy to know that your weak spots, your Achilles heel, so to speak. You don't want your enemy to know these things. Because this makes it oftentimes an easier battle for them, she says. So she says you don't want to make the battle easy for your enemy. Don't make it easy for your enemy, by wearing your heart on your sleeve, so to speak, and letting your enemy know everything about you, right? She says, now part of this kind of deals with being able to discern a true enemy versus a true ally. Because she says sometimes an enemy can pose as a friend. Sometimes an enemy can pose as a family member. Sometimes an enemy can pose as a lover. You've got to be able to discern, she says, and who a true enemy is. You've got to be able to discern those red flags. She says start there. Once you begin seeing too many red flags, she says no human is perfect, but once you start to see too many red flags and too many big red flags, it's time to pull away. Because this could potentially, number one, be an enemy already, and you may not know it. Remember, a lot of enemies move in silence or secrecy, she says. Remember, she said that earlier. So, number one, this person could already be an enemy and you may not know it if you see too many red flags with someone or in a relationship. Or number two, this person is basically showing you with their consistent red flags that they could become an enemy down the line. So she's saying it this way. Before you climb into the lion's den, alright, in terms of facing your enemies, you must know yourself first. Alright? She says when you don't know yourself and you walk into battle, you become susceptible to who other people say you are. That could include the enemy, who the enemy says you are. It's those moments she's kind of showing me, like in the movie, where the villain breaks down the protagonist by kind of like breaking them down mentally and psychologically. It's like that's what could happen, if you walk into battle with an enemy and you don't know yourself. You make it easy for the enemy to psychologically and mentally break you down over time. Says same thing you see in Hollywood all the time. Same things you see in a lot of situations. People who don't truly know themselves, don't know their essence, don't know their intellect, don't know their power, don't understand it. And then therefore, all of those things are utilized by other people. They become a puppet almost, kind of thing. A dancing monkey, so to speak, she says. So she says, number one, look at yourself. Figure out who you are. Know yourself. All right, that's the first part. Especially when it comes to strategy. She's kind of saying if you know you're not a fighter, it may not be worth it for you to get into to even climb into the lion's den. If you know you're not a fighter, for example, maybe therefore you need to fight in other ways. She says because of who you are, based on who you are as an individual. You're more intellectual, more of a thinker. Maybe step back, take some time, let things play out, and then come up with a plan. She says strategy, strategy, strategy. And she's kind of going like this: strategy, strategy, strategy. And she's kind of showing me like it's almost like she's in the center. She's walking up and down. She's walking up and down, but there's like soldiers on each side of her. There's a line of soldiers on both sides of her facing her, and she's kind of walking up and down the line of soldiers, and she's going like that. The same thing she just showed me: strategy, strategy, strategy. So this is something I think she taught her people. She taught her soldiers was strategy, strategy, strategy. Know yourself, know your enemies. I feel like this is something she actually taught to her actual people. She's kind of saying like know when an enemy is studying you. Because like the energy she's giving me, she's like a sloppy enemy. She's kind of going like a silly enemy. Like I think to her silly means sloppy. Is that like silly, like kind of like foolish, kind of thing. A foolish enemy, yes, a foolish, because she's okay. That clicks for both of us. All right, a foolish enemy, she says, will always give themselves away. All right, so she says, no one an enemy is studying you. They may slip up and accidentally like one of your pictures on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or something like that. But if you catch the notification before they take it away, it goes like, no, I know so-and-so doesn't like me, so why would they like my post? And then when I go to see what they liked, it's not there. Whoever that person is might be studying you, probably. If you have dreams about a person, right? If you constantly feel the presence of the person, you might want to start paying attention to them, particularly if they're an enemy. These could all be small but subtle signs that an enemy is watching you or paying attention to you. Remember, things are always going to play out in some way, spiritually or physically or esoterically. Everything is connected, all right? So she says sometimes, dealing with an enemy is a almost like a game of time and patience. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit back and wait. Patiently wait. She's kind of going, there were a lot of moments with her where she had to do that with her own enemies. She kind of wants to mention something, but then she's like, yeah, you know what? No, we'll mention that in part 2. So she just mentioned something, but then she kind of pulled it back and was like, we'll wait to mention that in part 2. So we'll talk about that in part 2. She says never give yourself away. The moment you give yourself away, it's a tip-off. It's like a domino effect. So if you have an enemy, you want to strategy. You first of all want to know yourself. Whether this is an enemy in the home, your neighborhood, your work, your job, your partner. The first thing is we're going to go in order in terms of the things you've explained to us, Cleopatra, because I think we may want to wrap this up soon so we can get into part 2. First thing Cleopatra said is know yourself first, period. All right? The second thing she mentioned in succession of order is to strategize. Once you know yourself and know who you are in terms of battle, in terms of dealing with an enemy and what you're capable of doing and not capable of doing, then it comes in the strategy part. Alright? Remember, during that part of strategy, you don't want to give yourself away. You don't want to give away the fact that you are strategizing against an enemy. Which is the number one, Cleopatra, by the way. This is just me speaking, Lamarr. This second part, people give themselves away so often. It's so interesting to me, that whole phenomenon of people feeling like they have to tell their enemy, I'm like actively working against you. I'm doing this against. I don't get that. So she's like, don't give yourself away. All right. Um, Patience is a virtue. She says when dealing with an enemy. She kind of goes, if you can, keep your hands as clean as possible. Whatever that means for you, she says. Um, she says know when your enemy is studying you. She also says always assume that an enemy is studying you as well. She says the one thing an enemy cannot take away from you is you knowing yourself to your truest core. An enemy could throw anything at you, and if you know who you are at the end of the day, nothing will shake you. Some things may kind of, cause a little bit of a shake or an earthquake, depending on how far the enemy's willing to go. But the further an enemy's willing to go, the dirtier their hands get, she says. Remember, keep your hands clean at all times as much as possible, she says. She says because karma is real. She says we'll talk a bit about that more in part 2. She goes, in conclusion, enemies are a facet of life. She says as much as you live in a highly educated society now, and she kind of goes, well, as educated as some people could be, she says, because she's almost like saying there's still some people out there who are not so educated. Right, but she's like, as much as she kind of words it a different way. She's like, I'll word it a different way. As much as you live in a society that has so much access to education, she says, one thing your society doesn't teach about is enemies. How to deal with enemies. She says, these are things you learn, in lawyer school, or these are things you learn going to the military, or things like that, or in boxing maybe, these types of paths, that some people take, how to deal with an enemy. But how to deal with an enemy is a life skill that a lot of people need, because enemies are, she's kind of saying it's a fact of life. There's different varying degrees of enemies. The lowest degree being just someone who's jealous of you, or like a frenemy or something like that. To the highest degree of, execution, murder, stuff like that, right? I mean, it gets serious. So, and you have to remember, Cleopatra comes from an age or an era where, to her, everyone is or could potentially be an enemy. So for her, it was important to have loyalty. It was important to have strategy. It was important to be so many steps ahead, all right? I mean, even sometimes the people around her that she felt she could trust, or that, were her confidants. She's like, even them sometimes I, had to side eye or keep at a distance, or, but she never showed. The way she's showing me is her strength came from, she never showed her true colors, or she never showed her hand. She never showed her deck of cards. She could be plotting against you, and you could be sitting next to her every Sunday through Monday. She may, look you in your eyes, have a full-on conversation with you, smile and laugh, but be plotting your demise for and weeks on end, and you wouldn't even know it. She really excelled at mastering her enemies, and this is why her legacy continues to excel as the queen among kings. All right. Cleopatra, we just love when you have a conversation with us. We love when you come along, and we just love you. All right, so thank you so much, Cleopatra, for coming through and giving us your clarity and insight. I know I'm acting like we don't have part two. I don't know. I just always feel like I have to thank her, because she's Cleopatra, for God's sake. So, I mean, she deserves it. All right, so thank you all for being here. Make sure you like this video. Keep in touch with me on my social media pages. If you would like your own personal reading, I am available at LamarrTownsendTarot.com. We're going to go ahead and get into part two. But we're going to go out with an outro with a bang, all right? Just to remember and remind you of who I am. Psychic with a T, the psychic with a T, that's me. That's me. The one with the T, the one with the T, that's me. That's me. When the planets align, spirit speaks on time, that's me. That's me. When the planets align, spirit speaks on time, that's me. That's me. When the trolls be gone, candle work be strong, that's me. That's me. When the trolls be gone, candle work be strong, that's me. That's me. I don't care what the others say. Let's channel some energy today. I don't care what the others say. Let's channel some energy today. Capricorn, Virgo, Libra strong. This tarot card reading about to be long. Capricorn, Virgo, Libra strong. This tarot card reading about to be long. Psychic with a T, the psychic with a T, that's me. That's me. The one with the T, the one with the T, that's me. That's me. When the planets align, spirit speaks on time, that's me. That's me. When the planets align, spirit speaks on time, that's me. That's me. When the trolls be gone, candle work be strong, that's me. That's me. When the trolls be gone, candle work be strong, that's me. That's me. Bye everyone, I'll see you in your own personal reading, or I'll see you in part two. Either way, I'll see you soon. Love and light.